All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for another conversation. Our Young Playwrights Guide conversations. Over here next to me is Matt Casey. How you doing, Matt?
I'm great, Jim. How are you?
I am wonderful. It is so good to see you. I have to tell everybody out there that this is a great, proud, surreal, joyful moment for me because Matt is a former student of mine. When I taught the theater education courses at Manhattanville College, Matt was one of my first students in your cohort of two.
Yep.
Yeah, I always loved working with you. I've enjoyed following the work that you've been doing since, and I'm so glad to not only get you here to talk about art and creation and young people and all of that great stuff, but just to see you again and talk to you again has been great. We've had a couple minutes here we've been talking probably for about a good 25 minutes, just getting back in touch and talking about things, and some of that I'm sure will come up again for the benefit of everybody out there.
It's amazing how time flies in between seeing you then and now, and just in the last half hour.
I know, it's true. We really just kind of fell right back into it, right? It's like nothing had ever passed, which is great. So tell everybody out here a little bit about you. What do you currently do? What are you currently involved in, and maybe how you got there? How did you become Matt Casey?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question, and one that I think my parents have finally understood when I'm just like, no, because I'm Matt Casey. That's how it works.
That's right.
So let's see. I'm Matt. I am in my late 20s, and for all of you struggling artists out there, I am also living with my parents at the moment. I met Jim at Manhattanville College, as he said, in my cohort of two, myself and my dear friend Gabby Gowdy. And we were in the theater education track, which very sadly doesn't exist at Manhattanville anymore. And I say that sadly, selfishly, because the reason that I chose Manhattanville was at the time in 2009, it was one of 4 accredited universities in the United States of America that offered theater education as a dual program that I was just so excited to jump into. Small liberal arts school, and this awesome opportunity to be virtually one-on-one with a professor. And poor Jim, I'm just going to shut you out now. I feel like half of those classes, besides the education components that you brought in, Gabby and I would sit there and just vent our heads off and circle us around back to what we were learning about for that week. So, but I am so grateful for that time, because I went from, my journey has been bizarre in the essence that I student taught at a general education school in Port Chester, New York, and I was a theater education major. And the reason that I was bridged into a general education world was, one, theater ed was such a small department, and there weren't many opportunities within our immediate area for us to jump in and invest full-time student teaching work within the theater ed world. And there were 2 wonderful teachers at Edison School who both were very much invested in the arts. That one of them had gone through NYU's theater program, mm-hmm. and one was doing literacy through the arts. So we were challenged in the essence as theater educators to learn how to utilize theatrical education components within a general ed classroom. And the best part of all that was we definitely got an adverse experience to some other theater educators who might have jumped in and taught at a more defined school through theater ed. And it's also what gave me the foundation for all the work that I've done thus far. The day after I finished student teaching, I received a phone call from the principal at the school who said, hey, come work here full time. And from a month later till 2018, I was teaching in random classrooms. I taught 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade consecutively, following one cohort, which I say was the most incredible opportunity as an educator to invest yourself not only in the linguistics and mathematics and core components of elementary ed, but also you invest in the whole child. So parent-teacher conferences went from the first year being, here's a specific grade count, to the time that they're in 5th grade where we're sitting and it's like a family meal and there's laughter and engagement. And it was a really awesome opportunity. But it ruined it for me, because the next year, when I jumped into the special ed world and I had those kids for what felt like a moment and then had to let them go, it was a challenge. And at the same time as all that, I was teaching in an after-school program, and the level of direction there was all about artistic celebration and thinking. I was creating my own curriculum through the arts and through core studies and how to integrate the arts in those studies. So it was an opportunity to invest in the work that I loved at 21 years old, and bring it to a lens of learners who had zero idea what they were walking into. And from that experience, in 2018, I was welcomed to become a director full-time at the after-school program, through a company called the Carver Center in Port Chester, New York. And through that opportunity, I became the senior director of school-age children's programs. So where I work right now, there's 5 benchmarks, which range from infants and toddlers through senior citizens. And I oversee the school-age children's benchmark in its entirety. So we have 2 after-school programs, about 50 to 60 educators with about 400 students within our 2 programs respectively. And it's my job to do the hiring. It's my job to do the invested engagement work in their curriculums. And some of the most exciting opportunities there, one particularly was I had the opportunity to hire my my co-teacher from when I was student teaching. So I'm giving her a shout out, Amy Simmons, who's a phenomenal 4th grade teacher at Edison School.
I remember her, yeah.
Yeah. When I started as senior director, she said, I want to come and teach for you. So I hired her as our arts and curriculum coordinator. And over the course of 12 months, she put on 2 shows in our after school program, working with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. They did rewrites of, well, not rewrites, but they did adaptation work with Where the Wild Things Are, and a couple other really great literary texts. And the kids wrote their scripts, they made their own costumes, they painted their own sets, and then performed for our family and community. And that is by far one of the proudest memories that I have of my time in my roles this yet, because it really was the capstone of the theater ed experience for me. Through all of this time, blah, 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 I have been very fortunate to work with dozens of different theater companies around New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, acting, directing, backstage stuff, and really just living this dual life of teacher, performer, educator, artistic investor. I love the opportunity to bridge what I love with people who want to learn about that. So that's where I am today.
And it's always fascinating to see just when you finish a project, and you're all over Facebook, which is great. It's been very fun to see all of that, which is probably why it was easy to catch up after so much time, right? We're constantly seeing each other there. But as soon as you finish a project, you got the next one right after it, which I'm always in awe about. And I think it's fascinating. And I'm glad too you mentioned the variety, because that was definitely going to be one thing that I was going to ask you to talk about, because you're everywhere. I mean, it just, do you find that are you seeking out particular opportunities? Do you find it's a little more of like, you're facing a direction, and maybe it's a little bit of the path leads you where it wants to go? Is it a mix of everything? How does that happen for you?
It's a great question. And the answer seriously is all of the above. I will tell you that I graduated in 2014 and immediately started working as an educator. Flash forward 2 years, I had done nothing artistically based. I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning in Milford, Connecticut, walking to the train station, arriving in Port Chester at 7:30, teaching until 3, going into the after school program until 6, walking to the train station, coming home, and I'd be home around 8:30. That was my day to day.
Yep.
And in 2016, there was one night that I was on the train on my way home, and we had a ghost enter the room just now. I just opened the door. A theater ghost is listening. I was on my way home on the train, and there was just something that said to me, why aren't you performing? Why, if my 15-year-old self saw me today, I'd get punched in the gut, because it's, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
And literally I went to playbill.com and I just searched non-union, non-paid, whatever's available in my area. And that evening, at the time that I was getting off the train, there was an audition opportunity at in Connecticut for production of the Chronicles. And I said, okay. So I got off the train, and the Arts Council building is connected to the train station. So I walked in. I did not have a resume. I did not have a headshot prepared. I quite literally walked in and said, hi, I'm an actor, and let me be part of this show. And I auditioned, and they liked me enough to cast me in that role and in that gig anyway. And ever since then, my community network in Connecticut alone, I mean, we're talking between 500 and 600 people. When I look at my Facebook friends, 60% are in an artistic network. It's some of my opportunities are sought out if I'm looking for professional gigs that are very much my type. I would say that I don't audition professionally as much because of my investment to the survival job that I love so much.
Yeah, that's fair.
But with opportunities that are closer to home, more regional or community theater based, I did a production, the production of Twelfth Night that was at the Public Theater a few years ago.
Yeah.
There was a company in, half an hour outside of the city in New York that my friend Rachel had gotten herself involved in. Rachel, I'm just shouting people's names out today.
Go for it.
There's no TM or anything, right?
That's right.
My friend Rachel, who I did a traveling Shakespeare production with, and the reason I got that production was because of Amy Sims, who was connected to that production. I'm telling you, everything's webbed.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel was going to audition, and she said, they need men. Will you come out? And so I drove to the middle of nowhere, New York, and auditioned for this show. The next day got it, and suddenly found myself driving from Milford to Portchester to wherever that production was. It's just not coming to my head right now. And we did the regional premiere of Twelfth Night. It was the premiere for the production outside of the public, and that brought in a lot of really cool reviewers and people that were interested in seeing how this production might work in a smaller capacity. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I met more people who got me into different companies. I just recently wrapped on the premiere of Something Rotten in Stamford, Connecticut. And right before that, I did Cabaret. I played the MC at a gay bar in Fairfield, Connecticut. And talking about, going from show to show to show, there have been times where I would be working at my school, then doing, more notably, I was doing Hairspray. And then at the same time that I was doing Hairspray, in between our 2 show days, I was also doing a chorus line. So I was going from work to Hairspray on a Friday. Mm-hmm. Saturday, I would wake up, we would do our matinee of Hairspray. I would then drive to a rehearsal studio. We would rehearse a chorus line for 3 hours, and then I would drive back to the theater and was doing Hairspray again. Wow. So my mind, body, soul has an affinity for performing, of course, but there's something about investing yourself in what you love that doesn't tire you out. So I think there's that quote that everybody says about, you don't work a day in your life if you love what you do. Yep. I strongly believe in that. And I think it goes a step farther to say, your own limits, and when you're going to burn out. And as long as you are taking care of yourself mentally, physically, put yourself into every opportunity that can come. Some of those are through networks. Some of them are through Playbill, online casting, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then some of them are walking into a door that you've never been in, completely unprepared, and just saying, hi, I'm a human being and I want to do something. I think there's this belief that the greatest artists of all time are inhuman, and the fact is they're not. They're just people. Yeah. They're people who love what they do. And if you love what you do and it crosses, you're going to find yourself working with those people one day. And it's incredible when you reflect on it and suddenly you realize, oh my gosh, I'm here and I'm doing
Absolutely. Well, and I think you said a lot of great stuff in there, and the one that I think really comes at the core of it is just that you said, "Hi, I'm a human. I'm here, and I want to do something." Right?
it.
I mean, I think what I'm hearing through everything you said too is that you're out there looking for it too. Just the opportunity, the chance to be involved, the chance to do something, the chance to create, which I think is a difficult step for for anyone to take, really. I mean, I was going to say young people, but just because that's the audience in particular, but I think really that's for everybody. There's a sense of that fear, and you talk too about like the greats are not superhuman. We all have those moments of setbacks, and I think it would be easy too to listen to what you described to think, well, he's superhuman, right? So I mean, not that what are some of the ways that you deal with that moment? Maybe it doesn't work out well, or something you've tried, you failed at it. How do you keep going? What do you do? You talked a lot about rejuvenation and taking care of yourself and things. So I think some of it might come from that. But is there something specific that you do in those cases?
Sure. I'm currently reading Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why.
Which I
And
saw you were reading, and then I picked it up. And
oh,
then
you did?
I did, yeah, and it was great. And my colleague at the high school, who's the music director, was reading it at the same time. So it was sort of like the world was telling us to read this book.
I love it.
Go ahead, yeah,
And I don't know if you saw, but it's in its 10th year anniversary,
yeah.
and Simon has been doing these weekly videos about different chapters, so that's been really fun to look at. But I bring that up because, one, it's a phenomenal text, and I'm exploiting his work right now. I don't know him, I'm not affiliated, but gosh, go read the book.
Yeah.
And the reason that I say it is because reading that book is a selfish opportunity to be reflective and to realize who you are, and what your why is. And he talks a lot about your why being the purpose and your resilient self in stepping forward, what gets you out of bed every morning. And your why doesn't change. Your why, you might not figure it out until you're 50, 60, 70 years old,
Right.
but it's a culmination of your purpose and the greaterness of what you bring to your personal life and your professional life. I fail every single day. On my bio, I like to say, I like to teach people stuff, and I laugh at myself all the time, and I fail every day. And failing sucks, but it's a wonderful opportunity to play Ben Franklin and say, okay, I found 1,000 ways something doesn't work, and how does it work? And I think the people that love you most will tell you, okay, if you didn't get the role that you wanted, or you didn't get the job that you wanted, and you put so much time and work and effort into getting it, and you still don't get it, they'll tell you, well, it wasn't meant to happen, or it wasn't meant to be. And I challenge that with maybe not right now, because some of the stories that I've heard of people actors specifically, there's a member of the Broadway company Ain't Too Proud who shared his story that he auditioned for a role 3 times, and on his 3rd audition they said, please don't come back. And he left, and then he came back and he booked it. I was up for a role for a tour last year, and it was, I don't audition professionally much, like I said, but when I do, it's very intentional. It's okay, yeah. I'm either going to get this or it's just not going to happen. But it's very stereotype based, because we're all stereotypes in some way or another, but I know my type really well. And usually when I go to those calls, I see the same 30, 40 guys, because we're always together fighting for something.
Right.
But I was given 3 callbacks on a continuous basis. I received a email at 7:30 p.m. for my first callback to learn 3 sides and 2 songs for the next morning at 8 a.m. And I did it, and I kicked butt at it, and then got called back to do a workshop, and then got called back to do a dance call, and then never heard from them again. And it was devastating, because I am not someone like so many of my friends who are constantly going out and doing it day in, day in, day.
Yeah.
But I think when you fail, or when you don't get that thing that you wanted more than everything else. Being sad is an okay thing to be. Being upset is an okay thing to be. And any emotion that comes to you is okay. It's just reminding yourself that you're resilient enough to get up and try again. And if it's not for that thing because it's gone or it's passed it by, create your own opportunity. What did you love so much about what you're missing out on? And how can you value your own experience? Or how can you take the feelings of want from that experience and put it towards something else that's equally as brilliant and positively, optimistically driving you towards getting that from it? Yeah. And I try to balance failure with my own sense of winning and accomplishing, and that can look anything like doing a reading of a play by myself or going and getting a drink with a friend. It's very, I think, individual.
Yeah, that's great. And just to emphasize for the people who are watching this too, that you're again bringing up a theme that's been consistent here about getting your own work together. Certainly that's of interest to me given the focus of my work here, but it's it even goes down to the idea, I forget who had mentioned it in one of the previous conversations, but that idea that we don't have to think about theater or art or anything creative, anything that's going to come from us as being in those traditional manners that we always see it. It's not just art because it's hanging in a museum. It's not just theater because we don't just get the role because we went through all those auditions and booked the role and played it and people know we're there and things like that. It could be just as simple as you said. So I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do a reading of something that I wrote, and there it is. You're out there, you're doing the work, you're going to learn from it, you're going to build something off of that, and it leads to the next thing.
And we're so fortunate right now, living in a time with social media and even this ability to have this kind of conversation that's not over the phone, we're face to face, and it's real time. We're having this opportunity. Before we talked a little bit about the superhumans in the business.
Yeah.
What I'm realizing is those superhumans are sitting on a couch somewhere at home alone right. with their family, and they're not doing anything.
Right.
So these are people that if you do your homework, and homework, I don't mean stalking, I mean doing your homework and figuring out what these people have going on and saying, hey, how can I just say hi or send a thank you? Or
right.
even farther than that is to say, I'm developing this and are you interested? Another plug that I'm going to throw out there is last summer, I was totally against doing theater for this summer. I had done 8 or 9 shows back to back to back. And I just said, I'm taking a summer for myself, which is so contradictory because theater is for yourself. But the company that I had been working with for 3 or 4 years at the time said to me, sorry, you're in this show. You're not auditioning, but you're in the show. You're coming and doing it. And it was a production of Barnum, and it was at a raised theater in the middle of a park. And we had, in our 4 or 5 performances, there was somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 people that came to see it. And starring in that show were Lisa Lampanelli and I'm going to kick myself and he's going to kick me when he watches it, but Javier Colon, who was the winner of the first season of The Voice. We're both in that show. And after walking away from that experience, these are 2 people who are industry professionals in their respective right. Who are human beings who showed up every day and made an impact, not to just say, okay, I'm here, I'm the celebrity, I'm doing my thing, but seriously checking in with each of us and then inviting us to their homes and breaking bread and talking about their life and their experiences. And it's just Michael Posnick, who was the director of the dance and theater department at Manhattanville College, always says what you put your attention to grows. And I lived by those words because it's the truth. If you want to network with somebody, network with somebody. If you want to build a theater, build a theater. It doesn't have to be Broadway. It doesn't have to be what you've known it to be, especially kids. You look at something that is so beautiful. Broadway is such a beautiful gift to us, but Broadway isn't just Broadway because it's Broadway. Broadway was built by someone.
Yeah.
And then people invested their time and energy into it because it was good. So you can build that good, starting with a pencil and a piece of paper. It's putting your energy down.
Yeah, that's actually, it's funny you say that, because one thing I've noticed in teaching middle school theater this year is I always kind of dread going in with theater history, because it's one of those things that, like, I love it, but it could be very boring to other people. It's one of those requirements, like, let's check the box kind of thing. But these last two marking periods, I actually had students tell me they're really interested in learning more about it, because they didn't realize, well, some of them I think didn't realize it was that old, or that
Yeah.
it could be created without lights and set. I mean, when I talk about the Greek theater, it's really as far as I get, like Greeks and then how the Romans take it. And I'll make some connections as we walk through the school auditorium. But a couple of them, really were like, I'd never thought about the fact that, 4,000 years ago, we were able to do it. And it really just goes to what you said about, it's really simple. Is like, I have a sheet of paper and a pencil. I've got a box of old clothes back here in a bar, and I can put something together. And it doesn't have to be this big Broadway thing. We were talking before about, community and things like that. I can gather my friends down the street. But I remember doing that when I was a kid. We used to make movies in the summer, just for something to do. We'd have these little, like, friend had one of those giant VHS recorders.
Yeah.
So like you do with what you have, and you make it, and you go from there.
And I think that's a really important thing that you just said, Jim, which is you do with what you have.
Yeah.
Money is great. Money can get you places. It can get you stuff. And it can certainly elevate the platform in which you are beginning. But what money doesn't buy are the individuals who are creating the opportunities. It pays for them. Let me state that back. It pays for their time and their essence of being. But if you are a student, or you're choosing to not go to school after you graduate, or you're choosing to leave school early, you are your own best weapon when it comes to whatever you want to do. So if you are passionate and you are driven to create whatever it is you want to create, you can do it with what you have. And then I swear everybody these days has a cell phone, and every cell phone, almost every cell phone has the ability to film. And making a social media or a YouTube is free.
Right.
It's just at your fingertips. You just have to do it. That's it. It's that easy.
That's great. I would normally end with, what great advice would you give to kids who want to be creative? I think you've given so much, but is there anything else you might share to people who are out there, looking to get involved, just what kind of advice would you give? Maybe even what advice would you give to, Matt Casey 20 years ago, that would be useful for you to know today?
Sure. I think I've said this already, but if 10 or 15-year-old Matt Casey saw Matt Casey today, I'd get punched in the gut, because when I was a kid, I said, I'm going to be an actor and I'm going to perform. And that didn't just mean Broadway. It meant just give me the opportunity to tell stories and to invest my livelihood in the opportunity to connect with the arts. And I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give is that no two journeys are the same. I have friends who have chosen that they're after getting collegiate degrees in whatever, that they move to whatever city and they are working a survival job, and are some of the smartest people I know who have business degrees and performing arts degrees, but they're no different than the person who's serving you your next, Happy Meal at McDonald's. Mm-hmm. But they're doing that so that the finances can come in, pay off their life while they spend every moment and instant driving themselves towards whatever dream it is that they need to get to, so that they have the time and the ability to do it. So what I would say, or any advice that I would give, is really simple and probably laughable, but it's simply to live your journey. If you see an opportunity, open the door. If that door leads you to somewhere that you never thought you would go, you're better for it. Because I'm 28 years old and I've spent my entire life in education, from learning to teaching to administrating.
Right.
And I'm now looking at a new opportunity and going to grad school in the fall for a whole different set of rules to live by.
Right.
And I never would have imagined that this is where I would be right now. But this is where I am. And there's zero judgment. And if I didn't want to be where I am, I could choose 10 other things to do. And let me tell you, kids, this is somebody with a lot of debt and who's a lot of bills. Figure it out. You just do. And if you listen to most performing artists, actors, directors, specific people who you idolize the most, sometimes their advice to you is going to make you feel better. And sometimes their advice to you may sound not so great for your journey. Right. And that's okay, because if you want to be the next Martin Scorsese?
Yeah, right. Yes. Sure.
The answer is you're never going to be him. It doesn't matter how you say his name. You're
that's
never
right.
Because you are only going to be the best you that you can be. If you want to make films, or what's that line from Rent? If you want to make films and write songs, you need somewhere to do it. Just go do it. Yeah. And I get excited about it because I label myself as an artistic collaborator. And my greatest gift comes from being in a room with people who are artistically driven to change the world and themselves for the better of their community through art. So
that's great. That's beautifully said. I'm glad I asked the question. I always get to the end and I'm like, we said so much good stuff. There's got to always be something in there. So I'm glad I asked. I'm glad you said all of that. And I'm glad that we could have this conversation. It's been so good to see you. So good to hear these things you've said. I think you've given a lot of great just aura and information and inspiration. And I just want to tell you, I always appreciate the joy that you bring to things, and it's helped me in hearing you talk today too, to kind of learn where that all comes from, which I really appreciate. So thank you, and good luck with the MFA program. You're going up to Emerson College in Boston,
yes,
which is great. So good luck with that, and keep in touch. And
absolutely, Jim. And
all right.
If there's anything that I can close on, it would just be there's a great company that's called Choose to Be Happy, and you have that choice every day. You have that choice. So
that's
just
great. Great. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.